in your studio.
Yeah. Claire, yeah, that's all right. Right.
He was going
Right.
to touch me.
I'm sure he won't when he gets back. Don't
No, he
even
always
worry
does.
about it.
He always does.
Don't you even worry about it.
Oh.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had all of that right.
Dun, 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 dun,
Why do I have Zoom open? Does Michelle have any family still in Colorado?
No, so they didn't even have family. They literally,
they-
her dad moved out there for work,
Gotcha.
and he worked out there for a couple years, and then ended up moving back. Like,
Yeah.
so what's funny is her family is all from here, and both of her brothers, her older and younger brother, were born here. She just happened to be born there.
Yeah.
Just weirdness. Teresa, you said did you say your birthday is August 19th? I missed it. I mean, I saw it a long time ago, but I didn't get around to it. If so, my birthday is August 23rd. So we're close. And
That's one birthday I know I won't forget this year.
Because someone's an asshole forgot. What a dick. I can't believe I forgot.
I really don't care.
I do.
I mean, the fact that you were so heartbroken about it is just as sweet as if you had remembered it. From my perspective.
I don't like to be that guy. Like, I really don't.
But I just don't think of you as that guy, whatever that is. I don't think.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I tried. Yeah, Janet, I was so
great.
damn heartbroken when taking Maddox to work Sunday.
There he is. Oh, yeah, of course he's, yeah. Ooh,
still got fat fingers.
What you going to do about that? Do some little finger exercises? Little fingies?
Never do anything about these sausage fingers.
That was the only comeback I had.
All right, I stayed with Zach, so I'll be right back.
Somebody loves me.
No, I got to talk to him.
Yeah, I know, right? Somebody loves me.
There's no more last minute. What were you guys talking about?
I don't remember. I asked something about, Teresa's birthday, and then we talked about my birthday. Then I said I was absolutely heartbroken. I mean, not really heartbroken, but totally had some tears in my eyes dropping Maddox off to work for the first day. It's a big deal. And he loves it. It's a big deal.
I never got to do that. Oh, yes, I did with Quentin. I was going to say, I feel like Quentin was driving when he got his first job, but
yeah.
No, he wasn't. I mean, he was working at the old Pizza Hut and drop him off at the Pizza Hut.
Man.
But he's 15. I can't even imagine Parker. I feel like Maddox is more mature than Parker, because I couldn't even imagine Parker going to work somewhere. Doesn't make sense.
I feel like I was going to tell you something else and I forgot what it was. It clearly doesn't matter. Does not matter what it was.
Is everybody back in here? Yeah, guys, mash the like button.
Scrabble that like button.
Scrabble it.
My boys went to the Detroit Pistons basketball camp last week.
I saw that picture.
Really cool. The funny thing for me was Friday they brought the championship trophies. They have 3 championship trophies, and they just literally had them sitting on a folding table in the hallway. There was nobody by them.
You should have taken them.
I'm not joking. I mean, you could have. You 100%
baby.
Just could have walked up and just snagged it and walked off. There was no I got pictures of the boys with them, but they were just on a folding table in the hallway. They had a little backdrop behind them, but nobody standing with them, not in a case, not
just grab and walk away with them, and that's it.
I was kind of weirded out by it.
I got to meet a bunch of cool people this past weekend. I went back up to I don't think we talked last week that I finally closed on our new property up north. And so 2 weeks ago, we went up there for the first.
We talked about it, Guy.
Your revival tent up.
Yeah, a revival tent. So I went back up by myself this weekend to, I had a clear spot for the second tent, and I was having contractors come to see. So I don't remember if I mentioned this, but of the 26 acres, about 10 of it are stumps every 5 feet in a grid. Because it was planted and then clear cut for telephone poles years ago. And so there's stumps that are 8 inches around, thousands of them. So I had some contractors come to look to clear the ground and went with. So it's crazy the difference in quotes that I got from people. The range was from $7,400 to $28,000.
Whoa!
It was whoa.
But what does that mean in terms of the quality of work and who?
Oddly, that I went with the cheapest one, not because he was the cheapest, but because I think it'll be the most quality work, and that's what because I actually talked to everybody that came out, and there were some really good people, and the one guy was literally out there counting stumps, trying to figure out ways, and there was another woman that was out there and was doing it. it really came down to the equipment. So they were the higher quotes were using like a mini excavator, so a much smaller machine where you got to like dig at each stump for a couple of minutes to get it out. And like the one guy is like, I calculated out it's going to take me about 30 days to get them all out of there, just to have all the stumps. Or the guy I went with has a big, giant, full-size excavator and a bulldozer, and there's 2 of them. So like his daily rate was double what the other ones were, but he's like, I'll have it done in 3 days. Because like he'll just with that excavator is like just scoop, 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 and the guy behind him with the bulldozer plowing and everything and leveling it out. But I'm super excited to have the land all like flat and smooth and useful.
Yeah, flat, smooth, and useful.
Because the guy that I bought the property from that subdivided out still has like 130 acres left. It's 100% like mine. I have a lot of woods in my property. His is all open like that. It's nothing but stuff. So it's like useless land because like you can't even drive like a 4-wheeler through it because it's literally like from me to you, there's a stump like that in a grid through the entire thing. So that happened.
That seems
a lot of ticks.
Did you know that going into it?
Did you say found a lot of ticks?
Yeah.
Because I just was shutting down. I got an alert on an email and I just like glanced at it as I was shutting off my notifications, and it's the Mayo Clinic telling me how to prevent and treat Lyme disease. The big old chubby tick in a photograph.
One of them lima bean ticks.
Yeah.
No, there's millions of it. But yeah, I knew it going in. That's why I mean I paid a ridiculously cheap price for the land, knowing that going into it.
Okay.
That it was all the stumps. But the thing was, I thought that I have like a stump bucket for my tractor. And so I thought like, I'll just take the tractor out there and just pop them stumps out. And then I went out there with my little tractor and my little stump bucket, and it takes about 15 minutes to get each stump out. And I'm like, this is going to take 50 years for me to get all these out of here and like digging away at those things. Like, no fucking way.
No,
not
we
happening.
need some help.
Yep. Okay. I think we are ready to end this pregame and get started on the big show. You guys ready?
Big show.
All right. We're in the pregame. Pregamers, love you guys. Hope you really enjoyed that. Oh, wait. I need your guys' help before I do it. What do I tell Erica the pregame is about?
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
No, none of that's true. Except for the
squirrels.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hang on. Pregame. So I got it. Squirrels.
Bird milk. Bird milk.
Squirrels, scrabbling, and coyote frolicking.
I can't believe you're not putting bird milk.
Well,
people are gonna be like, I gotta listen to this. Bird milk. What could that possibly mean?
No, Susan. You know, Susan, I feel like you're in the a patron. You know, we don't talk about real stuff in the Patreon.
What's a Koberger?
That's the
Brian. Is that like a Wahlburger?
He's the guy from the Idaho murders that pled guilty.
I know who it is.
But Jana, to your point, I agree with you that bird milk is interesting, but squirrel scrabbling and coyote frolicking just feels like it has a nicer flow to it.
But that's all me stuff.
That's true. Okay, here we go. We're gonna add we're gonna change up the format. Squirrels scrabbling, bird milk, coyote frolicking. Oh, bird milk, coyote. You guys, this usually happens during the pregame, so sorry for you non-patrons.
Yeah.
This is dumb fuckery.
Wait, Simone, what documentary?
Coyote frolicking and more.
Oh, we forgot to add and more.
Always add more. There it is. Squirrel. And for you non-patrons, look, this is what you're missing on. You miss an hour of talk that was about squirrels, scrabbling, bird milk, coyote frolicking, and more. Yeah. What you missed. And with that,
and I was here the whole time.
Yeah. We got Zach a new computer. By that I mean I took my old computer and fixed it up for Zach. So but it booted up, right?
It's like new.
That's better than it has been.
It's like new.
All right. Now, patrons, we love you guys. We'll talk to you next week. See you later. Bye-bye. Okay.
I didn't get to say goodbye.
You did. You had your chance and you blew it.
I don't think I said goodbye. Oh, maybe I did.
Jan didn't say bye either. You really fucked that up.
No, they only tune in for me.
Fuck that up.
Star of the show. Just kidding.
I got caught up on Kohlberger. I don't know. Nope. I don't know that much about that one.
Well, the big news was that he pled guilty to avoid the death penalty, right? and the families of the victims are pretty pissed about it because they weren't consulted. Yeah, that could be something we can talk about later. Maybe next week's pregame. For now, are you ready to hit record?
Yes, I am. I mean, no, I wasn't, but yes, I am.
I'm rolling.
I'm also rolling. I am also rolling.
Me 3.
1, 2, 3. I told you guys about what Ed did when we did that on
I'm just gonna leave this up here
on his episode, didn't I?
Oh yeah, they just started applauding.
Yeah. Just gonna leave that up there
Actually,
for you.
for a second, no, I'm gonna get rid of that right now.
Just gonna leave that up there.
All right, ready to go?
I've been ready.
Let's do it.
Ahoy, friends! Thank you for tuning in to Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for season 16, episode 28, a fake docu-series. This week, Bob was joined by Allison Clayton from IPTX and Ed Ates to discuss an upcoming docu-series and its unethical production. What we heard was absolutely disgusting. Nope. What we heard was absolutely shocking. We have a lot to talk about and a lot of listener questions. And Bob, Janet, and I are here. And Bob, Janet, and I are going to do our best to get them answered. But before we get into that, do we have any housekeeping?
Yeah, a little bit. A couple things. One, last week I mentioned the West Memphis 3 hearing going to be happening in July. Literally, like 12 hours after we recorded, we found out that actually that date got pushed back. So I believe it's settled now to happen on August 1st. Doesn't sound like anything bad's happening there with this date pushback. I believe Jesse Miss Kelly's attorney had a conflict. So they just pushed it back a week.
I'm glad you said that because my heart dropped when you said that.
I know when I texted you guys were both like, of course there's another delay. Yeah. Usually now this from what I understand, Jesse's attorney couldn't make the original date, so they pushed it back a week. So for anybody that's planning on going to that hearing, as far as I know, that's going to happen on August 1st now. And do just want to let you guys know where we're at. This Sunday's episode is the last episode of season 16. And then next week we start into our new big case, real case. We're starting season 17. We'll drop the next Sunday. So that's coming up. I was talking to the guys during our Patreon pregame hour that we're working on writing the script. We got things arranged for the first 3 episodes. So pretty excited to get started on that. Finally, it feels like it's been forever. This last, Jody's case really we kind of had to hit the brakes on that one much earlier than we intended when the Attorney General's office got involved with it. We had to kind of pull back out of that. So yeah, the intention was for that to run into first part of this year before we took a break for the next case. And so feels like it's been a long time. So we're ready to get going on that new case. And with that being said, you guys had heard some of this, but what did you think when you heard the whole story from everybody's perspective about what happened with Ed?
Well, it's pretty damn shocking and disgusting. We've been privy to this since you did it. I think you went and recorded right after the Berkshires. I think you left us to go down there. And, Janet, you told Janet and I basically that weekend afterwards what had transpired. And we've pretty much been sick to our stomachs since then about this whole situation. But to hear Ed talk about it, from Allison's point of view is one thing, but to hear from Ed's point of view is really what's disheartening about it. Him even asking for something, tissue to wipe himself off because he's sweating so bad because they have, just things like that sucks. Holy shit, does it suck.
I'm so anxious about airing to see how they portray. I just feel like these we did hear from this week from one of the producers, as one of the people that actually interviewed me and Allison to let us know that they left that production company after that whole incident with Ed happened.
Interesting.
So it's not like that whole team was like, no, this is great. We did it right. These guys are like this is one of the major players. I don't want to name names on that stuff yet. But one of the major players in the production is like
I think you did name their name in the episode.
Not this person.
Oh.
Well, yes.
Maybe not the person.
Somewhere in there I did. Yeah, I did. Or Allison did or somebody. But anyway, they obviously, and I don't know if it was before or after this episode aired, Allison just told me that they reached out and said that just so you know, I left that production right after that happened with Ed because I'm not being a part of it. So other people, even on that side of the situation, are aware of how disgusting it was as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know the element. I knew most of the story, obviously, but I didn't know the element of the Margie stuff, and that was That was really upsetting. And you know, frankly, I guess I had the same question when you first told us the story that a couple of our listeners have had, that they're sort of asking about in what is a respectful and gentle way, which is about the communication, your internal communication with each other. So I'm glad we're going to be able to address that, because I think it's probably something that a lot of people wondered about. And you know, this is a good opportunity to kind of talk about the fact that, you know, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like Ed and Allison had a conversation directly with each other about this, you know, lie detector thing, and like how
Right.
that came to be and stuff.
Well, that and I don't know. We don't need it. I'll so we don't have to go through everybody's names so we can get through this. I'm acknowledging there were a few people that asked, like, some of this falls on us on our end, like, how are we not communicating, like essentially asking, like, how did you guys, me and Allison, let this happen? And that's a fair question, but what you have to understand is a couple of things. Looking at it in hindsight, it's easy to say that, but here's the thing. One, for me, I'm not it's not my responsibility to make sure Ed's doing what Ed's supposed to be doing, right? I mean, that's between him and Allison. Allison and Ed were communicating, so I wasn't like, never during this process did I feel obliged to like, I need to step in and give Allison legal advice. Like, that's not a thing. Allison's a brilliant lawyer. Never ever would I think that would be a thing. I did talk with Allison enough, like we exchanged a couple text messages, and I just said, hey, so this is how this goes down. When they approached me, it was very clear to me that the premise of the show was that they were doing lie detectors, or what they called lie detectors, polygraphs. So in my mind, it was never a question of, does everyone else know that there's a polygraph element?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So because that's how it was presented. We're doing the show. Here's the concept of the show. We're giving them a chance to prove their innocence by having them tell their story and take a polygraph. So like, that was the entire so my, obviously now I look back on it, I kick myself for it, but my assumption was that was the same way that it was presented to Ed, and the same way it was presented to Allison. And then as I mentioned, I said to Holly on the phone, I was like, there's no way, like, this is not Allison nor any other attorney is going to go for this. And then she's like, no, Allison knows all. Allison's on board. She's going to interview for it. So my entirety of my communication with Allison was just me texting her, being like, hey, are you going to be a part of this series they're doing on Ed? They said that you're okay with it and that you're going to interview for it. And she had texted me back and said, yeah, I talked to them. Everything seems on the up and up. I'm going to, something to that extent. I'm going to, so in my mind, that meant she's aware
100%.
of everything and
Right.
she's all good to go. I think the same thing happened with Ed, where again, Ed knows what the thing is the whole time.
Right.
He says he wants to do it. He talks to Allison about it and says, I think it'd be good for the show to give a chance to get my story out. I think it'll be good. And so Allison's like, well, if you want to do that, then, I don't see any problem with you doing it. I don't have any concern about something coming out about you bad. There's nothing, that can come out in this case that's bad. There is nothing. So she's okay with it. So again, Ed thought Allison knew about the polygraph. So the discussion was about whether or not to do the show, him thinking she knows the show is about a polygraph.
Right.
From Allison's perspective, it's not like, I think it's easy to look back and think, well, why didn't Allison ask questions about a polygraph? It was never a thing.
Right.
So the way Allison was approached was, we're just doing the series. We're going to let people tell their story to prove their innocence.
Right.
Which is every documentary, all people do this shit all the time.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were like, and we might do a polygraph. And she's like, well, you need to let me know if they are. The polygraph was never mentioned to her. So there was nothing at all on Allison's radar that there was going to be a polygraph. So it wasn't like a question that was on the top of anybody's mind. Ed and I both knew about it, assumed Allison knew about it. Allison told me and Ed, let's go ahead and do it. None of us realized that they had lied to her and never and avoided the topic of the, I mean, I guess it's a lie by omission, or initially to her,
right,
by them just leaving that part out of it. So it was like there was nothing from what she heard that was going to prompt her to be like, well, just so I know, are you going to do a polygraph?
Right.
You know, she never thought there was nothing in the communication that made her think that was a thing. So I hope that answered everybody's question as far as, because I'm sure it seemed like where we just Ed just got thrown out to the wolves, and neither one of us were looking out for Ed. We were both looking out for Ed based on what we thought. For me, it was, this is an Allison question. Oh, Allison said it's okay. For Allison, it was like, what's this show about? Well, we're just gonna tell his story. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And then so that was it. It was brilliantly done, to be honest with you, by the production company. They set it up in a way that it never came up to anyone.
Yeah, I guess that's the other experience that you had, I think that's also probably coming into play, which like you literally had another experience shooting something that was a documentary that was about Ed and his innocence, and it was entirely positive and was not trying to manipulate facts or anything.
Right.
So you're kind of coming from the place of like, okay, like this is like his story is out there for one thing. His story is out there.
Yeah. Well, you heard
but
Allison.
Yeah,
that's what she said, was like, there isn't anyone out there that thinks he
right.
He doesn't need to clear his name. His name's cleared. No one thinks he's guilty.
Right.
Like really, like in his case, there's like, he's one of the few cases we have where I don't have anybody, trolling on social media saying how they think he's guilty. It's not a thing. It's so obvious. Yeah. So I don't know.
I think entertainment lawyers, like I mean, this sounds crazy, but there are just also like different kinds of lawyers. And you would imagine that like, okay, she's his attorney. So of course she's going to ask him what the specific exact content of the show is going to be. But to be honest with you, like, I don't know that would happen, because that's what an entertainment lawyer does. Like an entertainment lawyer is like obsessed with every single thing that's going to happen in every moment of the shoot, what the trailer is going to be like. Is there a trailer for the talent? Is there, like when you're sort of coming at it from the perspective of like, I want a full breakdown, and I want to like fine tooth comb the release, and I'm going to send back language that I think is better. All of that is appearance stuff. It's all appearance and entertainment attorney stuff. I don't necessarily know, again, like, because you had a positive experience also, and the way that they framed it to you was like completely innocence forward. I understand. Yeah. Hindsight is like, oh God, you just wish that, somebody at some point would have sat down and like gone through everything, but also everyone's busy. Like, that's another, it's like, this does not seem like a problem. So it's not going to get the attention that this other case that, Allison is working on, that she's trying to get someone who's not out of prison. Like all of those things just come into play, and it becomes this perfect storm of like, wow, they really exploited, your trust. They exploited people's schedules. They exploited, Ed's situation by, being able to offer him a stipend, which is really helpful to most people who could use that extra money. And it feels like, I'm very curious about the other, again, and then we definitely have a question from someone who wants to know, like, wow, everyone's curious, like, what the other stories are, but also not wanting to give A&E the views. But yeah, so just acknowledging Jan C and Monica and Lilius. I mean, everybody, again, respectfully, we're just like, oh no, how did like none of this come together until it seemingly was too late? But I think those factors all, it's like very unfortunate, and everyone had the best of intentions, and except for
on our end,
except for that company. Yeah.
Well, and you hit it on the head. Like Allison's not an entertainment attorney. For her, it's just like, is there anything in this production that could damage my client?
Right.
And when you're approached by a production company and says the sole focus on our show is to present these innocent people and show the world that they're innocent,
right,
and all we're going to do is tell his story, she had no concerns about that.
Yeah.
Ed had no concerns about taking a polygraph because he knows he's innocent. So like no one had any worry, whereas if Ed had that conversation with Allison, then that would have went very differently. But again, I think it was just one of those things where he's just like, yeah, I mean, are you okay with me doing this? I think this, and she's like, if you want to do it, yeah, I mean, it's fine. There's nothing in your story that I'm afraid of.
Well,
and also crazy, maybe nothing bad would have happened. Oh, sorry, Zach.
Well, I was just thinking about the polygraph, the links that they went to make sure that they could manipulate the polygraph.
That's what I was. Yeah, I was saying the exact same thing. Like, you also, if you're Ed, it's like, it's not going to occur to you that, you know, it's the same reason that everybody always takes polygraphs, which is like, why I'm innocent. I have nothing to hide. Why wouldn't I do this thing? And they're counting on that. They're counting on an innocent person saying, yeah, like, fine. Why not? I got nothing to hide. And then they set it up specifically to make everything look really bad.
Yeah. And there's so many steps they took. Like I said, the kink that got thrown into, because this could have ended up even worse. Well, it may end up worse depending how they cut it together. Like I said, I'm foreseeing I'm hoping they weren't rolling when Kim came in and got Ed and pulled him out of there, because I could just see them really dramatizing that.
Oh, sure.
That incident when it came out of there. But, you know, other than that, it could have been much worse. The thing that threw everything off, really the thing that threw everything off more than anything, was Ed driving an hour to pick me up to go have dinner with him.
Yeah.
Because they, like I said, they put us, you know, they didn't keep Allison overnight. They put me an hour away from Ed. They scheduled our interviews hours apart. They took her to the airport hours before. You know, they made it so that our paths would never cross. They even so like that day, the day of filming, the final day when we figured everything out and cut it off, they were filming Allison until, I think she was supposed to go until noon, and then they weren't filming me until 2, and then I was supposed to be done at like 4, and then they weren't filming Ed until like 6. So they put like 2-hour buffers between to make sure that like I was out of there before Ed got back. So, you know, it seems to me so that Ed wouldn't have a chance to tell me what happened with the polygraph. But he had already told me the night before what was going on, which they didn't.
It would be, it would be so helpful. I mean, just for my own curiosity, I guess, and edification, it would just be very interesting to hear from somebody who was on that team who did not feel good about it. Like, just to acknowledge, like, yeah, like everything that you perceived was not your perception. It was calculated, versus like if someone was like, oh God, no, like, I know it seems like that, but we were just really bad at our jobs. That's all, or whatever.
The most disgusting part to me, and then after this, we'll get right into the rest of the listener questions, was again, I think he was more than a PA. He was a little higher up. He might have been like a story producer or something, or a line producer. I don't know. But his name was Michael. When Allison left, when I went to set early and ran into her and they drug her away, and when I said to him, like, why, like, who decided not to tell Allison about the polygraph? Right. And he just got very nervous and looked away and said that decision was made above my pay grade. And that was the most disgusting part, because they still tried to claim, because the main I don't remember the name. Actually, I have my paper sitting here in front of me. I believe it was Matt from York and Wilder. But one of the main guy running the show, which I think was Matt Sprouse, called me afterwards trying to convince me to sign my release and telling me like, oh no, this was just a miscommunication, and just trying. And I just flat out told him, you're full of shit. You were full of shit. Someone on your team told me that was a decision that was discussed and made by the people above him, which I believe sounds like it's you. So don't give me this was an accident shit. And then he told me, that's why I'm curious how, what happens with these other cases. He told me that all of the other attorneys just thought this was the greatest idea in the world, which again, bullshit.
Yeah.
No attorney thinks a polygraph on TV is a good idea. No attorney thinks a polygraph in general is a good idea.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure.
So with that being said, let's go ahead and get through these questions.
Sure. So Nancy says, you said that the production company was going to pay Ed for a location fee. If he ever received a check, was there anything on it that would be a release, even just a few lines of text saying that cashing endorsing the check is a release for the individual signing it? I think Nancy is thinking that Ed did not sign a release, even though he did, right? Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned about that. So we'll see. So Ed signed when it was over with. When we talked to Ed, he's like, man, I don't remember what I know. I signed some releases. He knows for a fact that he never signed the location release for his house. He knows that for a fact because they were hounding him about, like, once everything blew up, they were like calling. I don't think they even bothered with Allison, but like I said, they called me trying to get me to sign a release, and they were trying to talk Ed, and Ed was talking to me and Allison. He's like, they keep telling me to sign this release so that they can give me my check, my $5,000 check they owe me. And that's when we found out they were paying him.
Right.
And I was like, wait, what? They paid you $5,000? And yeah, they paid me for a location fee. And I didn't know till he was on the call with us on the actual interview. I was using an example of what things I've heard people do, and that's exactly what they did with him. They were like, just give me 2 pictures and then we'll give you $1,000 for a materials fee, ways they get around paying them. But they were kind of blackmailing. That's probably not the right word, but they were, they're telling them, well, we're not going to send you your check for the location fee unless you sign the release. And we told Ed, do not sign that release. And of course, Ed's, he went through all this shit. It was horrible. He's like, they promised me they're going to pay me this money. They're supposed to pay me the money for it. Like they needed, and I, I don't remember who is, but I'm sure it was Allison. I was like, you can tell them, like, you still owe me this money. That was the agreed upon amount you chose to pay me to be here. I am not signing anything.
Right.
And then he said they just went ahead and sent him the money. So we don't know if there was something in the, like, I don't think there was probably something in the contract that said if you cash the check, then you automatically release things. I don't think, because if that was the case, they wouldn't have been pressing him to sign it.
Right.
But
what did they shoot at his house versus what did they shoot?
They shot most of it at his house.
But the problem is there something that says, and I don't mean an actual document, but I mean just in a thinking about it, like, this is what this money is for. If you accept this money, you're accepting the terms of the money.
My guess is that's what they're going to try to do. And I'm sure they're thinking, their thoughts are, well, he's not going to, Ed's not going to hire an attorney to do it. I mean, he doesn't know that there's 100,000 people listening with all kinds of attorneys that might just be willing to help Ed out on that if it comes to it.
Right.
But yeah, my guess is that's what they decided, because they gave in too easy. Because when Ed said, I'm not going to sign any release, but you still owe me that money because I let you use my property. And they said, no problem. And they sent him the money. My guess is that's the argument that, some lawyer somewhere on their side was like, just send the money, because then if he tries to sue you, you can be like, well, he cashed the check.
And the terms of it.
That's that's not from how it's been described to me, that will not be that will not hold up.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
That's
Obviously,
not,
I'm not a lawyer, but yeah. So I'm guessing they're probably, because we thought our feelings on this when this ended was they were scrapping it. Like we had the conversation. I straight up told, again, I think it was Matt, but the guy from the head guy at York and Wilder, I told him, like, no, I'm not signing a release. And if you guys intend to go forward with this, I'm going to do everything in my power to expose everything that you did before it airs.
Yeah.
And he just said, fine, whatever, and hung up on me. And that was the end of our conversation. And then Allison followed that up with a cease and desist letter from Innocence Project Texas. And we never heard a word from anybody. So we're all like, oh, they scrapped it. And my thoughts were, because we talked a little bit about this, but for you guys to, again, to understand how this works, like when you see something at A&E, A&E is not producing it, right? So this production company, York and Wilder, has this idea for a show. They go pitch it to different networks, and then A&E says, okay, we'll buy it, which means A&E says basically, okay, we'll fund it. We'll pay you X amount, we'll give you $3 million, whatever it is, to make the show and pay all your people. And then the production company goes and makes it, and then they submit it back. But, a big issue comes up, something like this, this has to be run then by the network. So our thoughts were, they probably got the cease and desist. This thing blew up. They probably had other attorneys and stuff that were already giving them issues too, we assumed. And we figured A&E probably just said, that's it, we're pulling the plug. That's,
Right.
You guys just spent 4 days of production that we can't use. We're done.
Right.
So and then it wasn't until Ed called me last 2 weekends ago and was like, he just saw that, some sort of promotion that they're going forward with the show.
And that his name is part of that promotion.
Right.
Okay. Well, Nancy's different. Nancy says, since you have also got a relationship with A&E, can you contact them about the super sketchy way this was done? What are the legal ramifications of them airing something without a release, or with a release it was retracted, which is kind of what we've been talking about. But do you have a relationship with A&E?
I don't. No, I worked with Oxygen.
Yours is Oxygen.
Yeah. Yep. So now I don't know anybody at A&E. We did, our friend John Cryer is the one that like helped he made some connections to give Allison the contact information for the head of legal at A&E so that we could get the letter to the right person, because our fear was too that the production company was going to be trying to hide all this from A&E. So that's why Allison wanted to not go to the production company, but go directly to the network, and John helped her make that connection.
And then you just never heard anything at all?
No.
So the second part of that, though, I would like to hear the second part of that. It says, what are the legal ramifications of airing it without a release?
I mean, I don't know. It's never. That's the thing is, I know from my production with like that was a huge thing. Like there, and our showrunner Dominique was always like we have to, and she was huge. Like the PAs and everybody that was involved in the production and the line producers and story producers, like that was their job to always get the releases signed before we film anything, to make sure, especially when you're doing a documentary. I mean, so on top of that, they was just stupid the way they handled it, especially if they're doing a show where they're going to try to do this whole gotcha thing that they tried with Ed. The fact that they didn't sign the release beforehand is so idiotic. It's unfathomable, like how they would do it, because otherwise what happens is they walk out and say, I'm done. And then they, they filmed for hours with Allison, they filmed with hours with me, and then both of us said, nope, you can't use it.
I wonder where your part of the production came in to the timeline of the rest of production, because what worries me is that they learned from you guys.
It was pretty early on. I think they told me they still had. I think Ed was the second case they did,
and that worries me that they learned from you guys on what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and unfortunately they didn't. And also, I'm sure it was part of it too. They made sure they planned. They scheduled to interview me and Allison after all the interviews with Ed, after the polygraph was done. They didn't even fly us into town until after all that was done.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it would be, if someone listening is a lawyer, I'll poke around a little bit on my end and see if there's anybody who might be interested in helping out, because for sure, I mean, like if it's as cut and dry as, we just have to see what happens and what they actually air. Someone will watch it. You will watch it. You have to. Someone has to watch it. I don't want a bunch of people to put their eyes on it, for sure, for the same reason you, expressed last week, which is we don't need to give them ratings or whatever. But if it's as cut and dry as like one of you shows up in that and you didn't sign a release, then that's just like a financial lawsuit. Like that is a civil lawsuit,
right? And
you will receive money. And the lawyer, if the lawyer just does a pro bono, then they'll take an agreed upon percentage, and everyone will, end up making money. Whether or not they took it that far, or that A&E has that sense of any of that, or if that letter ever made it to the right person, I guess remains to be seen. But it's definitely a financial liability, and it can be a very big one, depending on how willing to litigate someone is with a network. But
yeah, and I'll definitely, and I feel strongly that we'll have all the support we need to do that if it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, to answer the question, I don't know, because it's never even occurred to me that they'd be like, oh, they didn't. Not only did they not sign the release, but they directly told me you are not to use my footage. Right. And then they do it anyway. Like the only way I can see them doing that is if the lawyers or A&E are like, well, listen, we're going to make X $1 million on this. If it costs us a couple hundred in lawsuits, then a couple $100,000 in lawsuits, then we're just willing to take the risk.
Right.
That's what I fear with all of it. If they're just going to be like, no, because my guess is the way they set it up, especially with Ed walking out like this, it's probably the most salacious, exciting episode of the series. So they don't want to cut it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if that's what they've got, if they've got releases from Ed and Kim, then they'll put that, they cobbled that together. However, it made sense for them to tell that story, I guess.
It's so, when you take a step back and think about it, you have years of prosecutors, post-conviction attorneys, all the work we did on it for years and years and years of examining and studying every single element of this case. And they're going to present that we spent 4 days down there and gave him a polygraph with a non-certified guy in a hot box, and we figured it out. He was covering for his mom.
Right.
Like
That's
for them to think that for them to present it as like they cracked the case is so fucking disgusting.
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, there are people who, you know, will just take that for face value. But also those people, I don't know I don't know what power they have in Ed's life or anyone else's if they just sort of look at it on its surface. Okay. Tracy and Kelly were both interested in not necessarily knowing that traditionally you would not be compensated for being a subject or for being, being interviewed or participating in something that's more documentary rather than scripted or a game show or what have you. Tracy's like, is there a non-sketchy way for that to happen? Kelly is like, why shouldn't they offer money? I think it's also different. I think it's one of those kind of gray areas where it depends on what you've deemed to be journalism versus entertainment.
Well, and that's exactly it. So news media and documentary are considered journalism. And in both of those elements, it violates journalistic ethics to pay a subject to be interviewed. And the reason for it is because it's a credibility issue, because as soon as you start introducing money into a production like this with somebody that then now all of a sudden now you have is someone going to do something that they wouldn't normally do because of money, like take a polygraph? Or are they willing to say something that they want you? I've dealt with it besides my own docuseries. I've dealt with it I've appeared on, I don't know, 5 or 6 other documentaries. And you always deal with it with producers like, can you say this? Can you do this? Can you do this? I think this will be a great scene. Can you do this? And there are things that you're just like, no, I'm not going to do that. But then all of a sudden you throw this money element at them. Mm-hmm. And it changes things. It changes the dynamic. It changes what people are willing to do. And so for that reason, no, you do not pay subjects. Now, the exception to that is when you're paying someone for their work. So say you bring in an expert, like when in ours, we had Jim Trainum on to talk about false confessions. He is an expert. And as a matter of fact, I don't think we paid Jim either. But that would be an example. I know, I feel like we paid the medical examiner that came on. We like paid her for her time. I want to say maybe that was the only one, but that's not uncommon to be like, okay, right, you're a professional. We're not paying you for an interview. We're paying you to use your professional expertise to analyze this thing and then come on and share your analysis with us. And so that's a little bit different.
But that still even seems like a sketchy fine line there too.
It's similar to like in court, like if an expert witness in court comes, like you pay them for their work because they're a professional and you're asking them to do their work in their professional capacity. So you compensate for it. But and as I'm saying this, I honestly don't know that we did even pay Jim. Jim popped in my mind because a good example of this is in Serial with Jim Trainum. And you remember, so there's an idea of how journalistic integrity works. I don't know if any of you guys remember all the way back to 2014 in Serial, when Sarah Koenig had Jim Trainum on, she made a point to say, just so everyone knows, we did pay Mr. Trainum for his time. So they said that on the pod, and that's because that was so out of the ordinary to pay somebody an interview subject for something like that. But that's why I wanted. So in the YouTube chat, Josh sent us a super chat to ask. Wants to know, did Ed's mom and Elnora have any problems? No, not that I'm aware of. And Josh, I don't know how much, because I saw you were asking earlier if it was like a hit piece on Ed's mom. I don't think it's intended to be that. I think what it is they needed a story. They needed something that was, as I said, This series is of no interest to anyone. If it's here's 7 people who say they're innocent and we investigate their case and they take a polygraph and they're innocent, that's no one's going to watch that. And
Right.
so in Ed's case, the results they manipulated out of the polygraph was that Ed was truthful in saying that he didn't kill Elnora, but not truthful in the fact that that he was being deceptive when he said he didn't know who did it. And then we don't know where they're like, there's no evidence.
But that's for sure. Like they said that. They told those things to him.
Yeah, he said they told him
Okay, gotcha.
in his polygraph, in his thing at the end, that he failed the question about did you know who did it, and then they started questioning about his mom, and that's what clicked with me during my interview when they kept asking me about, do you think it's odd that she took her own life, right before he got released after she found out, was it just guilt, and that's when I was like, what are you talking about? Like she wasn't like that's not true at all. And then, of course, that didn't stop them from continuing on with that line. So my assumption, the way in the production world, how that was going to work is, oh, well, we'll just cut that part out of Bob's interview where he corrected us and told us that
Right.
that's not true. And we'll still go down that line with Ed later.
Yeah, that was something that that Jordan had asking about, and that Pamela kind of tried to help along with, was this idea of like, where did that come from? Like, where would they have gotten the idea that timing was true, or that it's just like, I understand that Ed's case became more famous in this because of this podcast and because of Web of Death and all of that. But like, for us as listeners to the podcast to not know where that to be like, what? Where'd that come from?
This is where it came from. They're idiots. They're not investigators. They spent a few days looking at the case files, and somebody came up with this harebrained theory of maybe Margie did it. I think probably because if you remember correctly, if you can remember that far back, almost 9 years ago, that was David Dobbs. One of his initial theories was that maybe Margie did it. He had said that he thinks Margie did it. What these investigators didn't know is that Margie's fingerprints and DNA has been tested against all the evidence on the crime scene, and she's been cleared. We know for a fact that it wasn't Margie. So, but they didn't know that because that's stuff that happened later,
Yeah.
Well, Pamela actually pointed towards the Texas Monthly article that had been written about it. I can't, it's behind a paywall, Pamela, so I actually can't read beyond the first paragraph. All due respect to Texas Monthly, which is usually a really good
the Michael Hall
publication.
article?
Perhaps. It definitely brings up Truth and Justice. But she said it looks like this could be it. Michael Hall. That this could be where they got that, and perhaps they erroneously misrepresented something in such a way that would cause.
Yeah, if I remember, I have a copy of that because Michael had sent me a copy of it when he the magazine, the actual magazine when he wrote it. Because I think that's because I'm remembering David Dobbs saying something along those lines, and I think it might have been for his interview for that article where he said he always kind of thought that. But yeah, so that's all it is they just thought, what could it have been? All the investigators that have worked on this case for 20 plus years, they all must have missed the fact that Margie did it, and so they just went with that. And again, I know I've said this, I said in the episode Sunday, I'm saying it already said it once a day, I'm going to say it again. Like, this is how they're trying to frame this. I told them hours before Ed's interview that they were incorrect, and then I sent them screenshots of links of both Margie's obituary that showed when and how she died, and of the episode, the date of when we found out Ed was getting released, which was March 19th, 2018. She died in 2017 before, like, she never knew that he was coming.
Right.
So they had that information and still continued with their theme that they had, because I guarantee you their producers already wrote the beat sheets. They already had things laid out on the storyboard, what this is going to be. And the big reveal is going to be that it was Ed's mom.
Right.
Facts be damned.
Right. Okay. Well, Teresa wants to know if there's anything that we can do at this point. I think you made it clear last week that one of the things that you would prefer people not do is watch. But yeah, and I don't know. I mean, it's hard to give like a call to action to something that's almost like a negative, like a absence of action. Um, I would just like, I feel like I just want to wait until one person tells all of us what is in it, and then we can kind of go from there.
I'll just say this. I hope that when A&E, and maybe they already have, last I looked, they hadn't, starts promoting this all over their social channels. I just hope that they are exposed for what they did and what they're and what's coming in this documentary before it airs. That's my biggest hope. So if you want something to do, just, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. You figure out on your own what you want to do, but you have the facts. If you see them posting about it and stuff on social media, feel free to comment however you feel is appropriate. Share it with comments.
Is there any part of you that's worried that that's going to create that sort of no press is bad press kind of like sensationalism where everyone's like, I gotta see what this is all about?
I don't think there's going to be any avoiding that. We can. So the best thing that to me, if that production company is exposed for what happened, and my hope is at this point, go ahead, air the shit you're not supposed to air, and we'll sue the shit out of you from every angle that we can get.
That's kind of the ideal for me. The ideal is I hope that they go all the way wrong instead of like walking a line,
Yeah. And it's not that I'm like, oh, I hope that I can get a bunch of money from this. That's not it at all. It's if this production company, because of that, ends up getting blackballed from ever doing anything like this ever again, then I think we've succeeded. I don't think there's any world, like even the angle they were taking wasn't that Ed was guilty, right? But I don't think there's any world where this is going to come out and the world's going to all of a sudden think that Ed's a bad guy. I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to be very slanderous towards Margie, and then there's not as direct, but what they're accusing Ed of doing is that he had a wife, a pregnant wife and a 2-year-old, and decided to go to prison for the rest of his life and abandon his wife and children so that someone else wouldn't get in trouble. And that is awful. That's awful to say about somebody. It's awful to think that. I mean, imagine being Kim if that was true. So it doesn't matter, like the damage they're doing to Ed's reputation is they're not saying he killed Elnora, but it's almost as bad.
Right.
What they're trying to say.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. That kind of does it for the questions. Yeah, we were sort of in the range of, how can we help? We want to know what happens without watching, and Grayson had a really good point about, just how much credibility anyone should give anything like this. Like, it's just so hard to know unless you have a personal involvement in it, or you know somebody that you trust who has a personal involvement in something like Web of Death, for example. Just kind of the feeling of unease that I think this gives people, which is like, how much stock should I put in anything like this that I see that's kind of maybe geared more towards entertainment than I'm not picking on Web of Death. I was just thinking, like, if anyone thinks that, it's like, well, you were part of that and I trust you. That's a different scenario than just like something random that,
Not directly on this, but I mean, didn't they do an episode on Sandy Melgar on one of the series, and they
Dateline.
just like put snapped or
and
it was so grossly mischaracterized of what happened.
Well, even the Dayline version of it was terrible. But then we did the 2020 version, and it was very, very accurate. I would say it's hard because there are very good, well-meaning documentary producers that are very that follow journalistic integrity and guidelines, and they are like I never had a fight with anybody on my production team about them trying to do something icky that I didn't agree with. No one would, like, everyone, it was the opposite. Everyone on that team was like, no, we don't do this, we don't do this, we don't do this, we only do it, we're going to make sure that we're being very fact checking and fact checking and fact checking and fact checking over and over and over again. That was, once we were done and in post, so much fact checking to make sure every word that was spoken was accurate in that docuseries. So there are good ones out there. So I don't know what but I would say this: anytime you're watching someone completely explain to you and try to they're solving the case or trying to make some big revelation in a case in an hour production, think about how long it takes us to get through a case to do it properly.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be an entertainment spin to it. And also, whatever you got to look at what was the through line, what was the purpose of the series, because there's always has to be, in order for those networks to buy it, there has to be something to them that's going to be a hook. And that hook is never going to be, we're going to approach 7 innocent people and we're going to prove that all 7 of them are innocent. They're going to say boring, right? Nobody's going to watch that. Nobody gives a shit. Right. You got to have something. So, but I guarantee that pitch was, I'm sure some of them, some of these cases will get, the polygraph, they'll fail the polygraph and it'll be, this big thing, so I don't know. Anything should be taken with a grain of salt. It's easier for me now, because like I said, I host a true crime podcast. I produce a true crime docuseries, but I don't consume true crime very much, hardly at all. So it's easy for me to be like, I just don't even care, unless it's somebody that I really don't generally, unless it's somebody that I know and trust that's producing it. I just don't give stuff much weight. And on that note, that's a perfect transition into our close for our final episode of season 16. I'm super excited about it. This Sunday, so in 2 days from the day you hear this, we're going to hear from Amanda Knox, and it was a really, really cool conversation. I think we ran for over an hour. Very much appreciate Amanda. She's you'll hear about in the episode, but but I had just reached out to her because we were covering interrogation techniques and false confessions, and on Labyrinths, her and Christopher, her husband, did an amazing, from someone who just produced a bunch of a series on interrogation techniques. I will say that Amanda and Christopher did the best job I've ever heard anyone do ever, breaking that whole process down. It's fabulous. The whole 6-part series. Did you listen to the whole thing, Janet?
Yeah, it's great.
Isn't it amazing? But I was just reaching out to her about that, and then realized, like, man, she's super busy. She's all over the place on these huge podcasts and shows and everything. I didn't realize she had just released a new book. The nice thing is, with our delay, I had time to read the whole book, so we talk about her book quite a bit. Her book is called Free. If you guys want to, if you have in 2 days, you want to consume a book real quick, an audiobook or another one, she reads the audiobook on Audible. So we talk about her book, and she also has a new series that she's producing on Hulu that's coming out August 20th called The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. All very cool stuff. So we talk about all that, but Amanda really, really digs into what happened with her and her false confession in our conversation. And there's parts of it where, like, she gets emotional. It's amazing to me that, after all these years and after all these interviews, that it still hits so hard with her. So in any case, the finale of season 16 is this Sunday with Amanda Knox. Make sure you check it out. Patrons, I'm going to put the video up for you guys so you can watch the video version on Sunday as well. And then next Sunday, we start season 17. So lots of good stuff coming. We love you guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
All right, stop on our audio. Oh, all right. All right. Chat, we're going to shut this thing down. It's 9
Thanks,
o'clock.
chat. Thanks for the heads up about the Facebook post, or like
the what?
The name of the show, and I guess Kaylin said they just made an ad for the doc for their banner 20 minutes ago.
They put up, looks like, previews yesterday.
Yesterday they did?
Yeah. But I just was on their website. They only have one episode listed and one episode preview listed. They don't have any of the other episodes listed.
Yeah.
And I feel they have Gary Coleman, Gary Coleman's ex-wife, Shannon Price, and then they have Ed, and they have 2 more names on here. So I don't know how many cases they're actually covering
I know it's supposed to be 7 originally.
Okay. Well, it's 7 episodes, but I don't know if it's 7 cases because they only have 4 names.
Oh yeah, I don't know. As a matter of fact, I think I remember him telling me that they originally had, because they were struggling because they had like 9 and it was like whittled down to 7, which I guess was attorneys finding out what's going on and bailing.
Well, and this Gary
I'm gonna
Coleman
end this
one's
live.
2 hours.
Sorry,
Okay.
we're gonna end the
Sorry,
live.
guys.
Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye,
I thought you already
guys.